My name's Sarah, I'm 24 years old, and this happened about a year ago. I was fresh out of college, desperate for work, and when a mid-sized insurance company downtown offered me a data entry position, I didn't even hesitate. It wasn't glamorous, fluorescent lights, gray cubicles, old computers, but it paid the bills. They started me on the night shift. It was quieter, I'd make a bit more money, and honestly, I liked the idea of working alone. Most nights, it was just me, a security guard who usually slept through his shift, and the hum of the building's old HVAC system echoing through empty halls. The first week went fine. I'd show up around 9 p.m., clock in, grab a cup of burnt coffee, and settle into my little workstation on the far side of the floor. But on my fourth or fifth night, I started noticing something strange. There was this cubicle 2 rows over, always had a coffee mug sitting there. Sometimes it was half full, cold. A few nights later, there were fresh crumbs, like someone had been eating. One night, a half-eaten granola bar. Another night, a file folder opened, pen uncapped. I figured maybe someone worked late and just didn't clean up. But when I asked during a team meeting, my supervisor, Linda, kind of froze. She said, "Oh, that's Greg's old desk. Don't worry about it." Someone else at the table muttered, "He's long gone." And the way they said it, it wasn't just he quit. It was something heavier. When I pressed a little, Linda gave me this look, the kind that ends a conversation, and said Greg was let go after an incident but didn't say more. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every creak of the building made my chest tighten. I told myself it was nothing. Just a messy desk. But when the lights flickered around midnight, I caught something in the reflection of my monitor, movement, like someone walking past Greg's cubicle. When I turned around, nothing, just the hum of the ceiling lights. A few minutes later, I heard it, typing, not mine, from the other side of the room. Quick, rhythmic, the kind of confident typing of someone who knows their way around spreadsheets. I froze. I waited for it to stop. And after a few seconds, it did. I stood up, called out, "Hello?" No answer, but the weirdest part, when I sat back down, the air smelled like coffee. Fresh coffee. I checked the break room. The pot was empty. No one else was on that floor. That was the first night I thought about quitting. The next few nights, it kept happening. Some nights it was typing, others it was the sound of the chair rolling, that soft squeak of rubber on tile. Around 3:42 a.m., I remember hearing the chair creak, then roll, like someone had just pushed off from the desk. I grabbed my phone, started recording, but by the time I hit record, the sound had stopped. The video only captured the hum of the lights and my own shaky breathing. Still, when I walked over the next morning, the chair was slightly turned, not where it usually sat, and the computer monitor was on, showing the company's login screen. Greg's name, his old username. I asked Linda the next day if maybe IT had reactivated his account by mistake. She looked genuinely startled, said, "That's impossible. His credentials were removed months ago." She paused for a second, then said quietly, "If you're staying late, maybe don't sit near that side of the floor." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. The more I tried to ignore it, the more I felt like I was being watched. I'd hear footsteps down the hall when the elevator hadn't moved. Sometimes the automatic lights in the corridor would flicker on, as if someone had walked through. And then one night, I saw it. I came back from the restroom, and as I turned the corner into my row of cubicles, I saw a shadow sitting in Greg's chair, a shape, shoulders hunched, head down, typing. The sound was loud now. Real. I froze mid-step, too scared to even breathe. Then the typing stopped. The chair slowly turned, but by the time I blinked, it was empty. Just that damn chair, still spinning. I ran out that night without clocking out, and I swear, as I passed the cubicle, I felt a rush of cold air, like I'd walked through someone standing right there. I almost quit after that. I even drafted my resignation email. But rent was due, and jobs weren't easy to come by. So I convinced myself it had to be stress, exhaustion, anything logical. For a few nights, everything was quiet again. The cubicle stayed untouched. No coffee mug. No crumbs. No typing. Then came Friday, March 18th, my last scheduled night before the weekend. I remember because I was counting the minutes until I could leave. It was around 2:57 a.m. when I started hearing it again, the typing. This time, it wasn't faint, it was close. Clear. Every keystroke echoing through the empty office. I stood up, heart racing, and stared toward Greg's cubicle. The glow of a monitor lit up the wall. I could see it. Someone was sitting there. For a long moment, I just watched. My brain refused to believe what I was seeing. The shape of a man, shoulders hunched, neck stiff, his hands moving fast on the keyboard. I whispered, "Greg?" Before I even realized it, the typing stopped instantly. The chair spun halfway toward me, and my hands were shaking. I told myself, "You have to look. Just look and get it over with." I walked slowly toward the cubicle, every step echoing off the linoleum floor. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. When I reached the entrance, the chair was still spinning, empty, the monitor was still on, and an email window was open. The to field said, "Sarah." The subject line read, "You shouldn't be here this late." The message body was empty, except for the blinking cursor. I stood there, frozen, watching the cursor blink. Then the cursor moved on its own, one letter typed, then another, SARAH. I screamed. I ran to the elevator, hit the button over and over, but it wouldn't move. Finally, I bolted for the stairwell and didn't stop until I was outside in the freezing night air. The next morning, I called in sick, then I called again the next week, and quit for good. A few days later, one of my old coworkers sent me a message. She said security had checked the camera footage from that night because the system flagged an unauthorized login. They watched the video. IT showed me walking toward Greg's cubicle at exactly 2:58 a.m., but there was no one else there, no shadow, no chair movement, nothing, just me, and the chair spinning on its own. I asked her if she could send me the clip, but she said it had already been archived, and then deleted. I don't know what happened to Greg, I don't know what that incident was, but sometimes, late at night when I'm working from home, I'll hear faint typing coming from the other room, and every time I check my inbox, there's always one unread draft message waiting. No sender, no subject, just a blinking cursor. They watch. My name's Emily. I'm 27 years old, and this happened about 2 years ago when I started my first real office job. It was at the corporate headquarters of a retail chain, the kind with bright red name tags and fluorescent lights that buzz louder than your thoughts. I'd been unemployed for months before landing it, so when I got the offer, I didn't care that the office was a 2-hour commute or that the pay wasn't great. I just wanted to prove myself. On my first day, they sent me to HR for onboarding. That's where I met Diane, the HR manager. She was polite. Too polite. The kind of person who smiled just a second too long, like she was studying your reaction instead of your words. She had this calm, syrupy voice and a weird habit of touching people's shoulders when she talked. She welcomed me, gave me a tour, handed me the employee handbook, the usual stuff. But at the end of the meeting, she leaned forward across her desk and said, "Emily, I take pride in really knowing my employees. Not just your resume. Who you really are." I laughed awkwardly, thinking she meant it in a mentorship kind of way, but she didn't laugh. She just kept smiling. Her office was spotless, like unnervingly clean. One framed photo of a golden retriever. A single plant that looked fake. Everything else was locked away, except for one drawer in her desk that she always kept a hand on, even while talking. The first week was normal enough. Diane would stop by my cubicle once a day just to check in. She'd compliment my hair, ask about my weekend, or offer me tea. She never really blinked when she talked, she just stared. I started joking with one of the other girls on my team, Jenna, that HR probably stood for haunting regularly. Jenna didn't laugh. She told me to be careful what I said around Diane. Then she lowered her voice and said, "Did you hear about Tyler?" I hadn't. She said Tyler was an analyst who went missing a few months ago. Showed up for work one day, clocked in, and never clocked out. HR handled it quietly. The company told everyone he resigned suddenly. I thought she was just spreading gossip until Diane showed up behind us out of nowhere, smiling, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to Jenna and said, "Let's keep conversations professional, okay?" The way she said it wasn't angry. It was gentle. But it sent chills down my spine weeks past. I tried to ignore her weirdness. She was my boss's boss, after all. But one night, I stayed late to finish a report that was due the next morning. The office was silent except for the sound of my typing and the occasional pop from the ceiling lights. Around 9:30 p.m., I heard something strange coming from down the hall, a muffled sound. At first, I thought it was someone talking on the phone. But when I got up to refill my coffee, I realized it was coming from Diane's office. It sounded like crying, soft, broken sobs, like someone trying to hold it in. I stopped near her door, my heart pounding. The light was still on inside, but the blinds were half closed. I could see her silhouette sitting at her desk, not moving, just sitting there. I thought maybe she was on a call, so I whispered, "Diane? You okay?" The crying stopped immediately, then, nothing, just silenced. I backed away slowly, grabbed my bag, and left without finishing the report. The next morning, Diane greeted me at the door with her usual smile. Like nothing had happened, and then she held up an ID badge between her fingers, dangling it from a red lanyard. "Someone left this in the parking lot last night," she said cheerfully. The name on it made my stomach twist. Tyler, the guy who went missing. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe he dropped it before quitting. Maybe Diane had found it in storage or something. But deep down, something felt wrong, and every time I passed her office after that, I couldn't stop thinking about that sound, that quiet, broken crying echoing through the hall. After that night, things just got weirder. Diane started calling me into her office for one-on-one check-ins. They always started friendly. "How are you settling in, Emily? Are you enjoying the company?" But they never stayed that way. One afternoon, she leaned forward and asked, "Do you ever feel guilty when you lie?" I told her I didn't know what she meant. She smiled. "Everyone lies. Even good people." I laughed nervously, but she didn't break eye contact. I couldn't tell if she was joking or testing me. After that, she'd sometimes appear behind me when I didn't hear her coming, asking if I was being honest about my work hours or my personal life. She somehow knew details I'd never told her, like that I was seeing someone, or that I lived alone. One day, Jenna quit. Just stopped showing up. No goodbye, no notice. Diane said she'd moved on to new opportunities. By then, I didn't believe a word she said. The last straw came about a week later. I was staying late again, this time, intentionally. I'd been telling myself for days that I needed to know what was going on. I wanted to look in that drawer she never let go of. At 10:11 p.m., the office was empty. I waited until I saw Diane's car pull out of the lot through the window. My hands were shaking as I walked toward her office. The door was locked, but I'd noticed before that the maintenance key worked on all doors. I borrowed it earlier that day. When I stepped inside, the air felt heavy, stale, like old perfume and dust. The faintest smell of iron. Her desk was immaculate, like always. I turned on her lamp, the light cutting across the room in a pale orange globe. I tried the top drawer, just pens and paper clips. The middle one, empty. Then I reached the bottom drawer. It was locked with a small keyhole. I used a paperclip from her own desk. My hands were slick with sweat, and it took a few tries, but finally, click, the drawer slid open. Inside were dozens of employee ID badges, stacked neatly in rows. Each one had a piece of hair taped to it, like a tiny strand carefully preserved. Beneath the IDs was a folder labeled "Those Who Lied to Me." I opened it, pages of printed employee profiles. Some had red ink across them. Words like untrustworthy, dishonest, removed. The last page had my name, Emily, hiding something. I don't even remember standing up. I just know my knees went weak, and I almost dropped the folder. That's when I heard it, slow, deliberate. I turned off the lamp and backed into the corner, trying not to breathe. The footsteps stopped right outside the door, then the knob turned, the door creaked open, and the light from the hallway poured in, outlining Diane's silhouette. She was holding something in her hand. When she stepped closer, I saw it clearly, my employee ID. She smiled, not the polite kind. The kind that told me she already knew I was there. "You left this on your desk, Emily," she said softly. Her tone was warm, friendly, like she was offering me tea again. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. She walked around the desk, picked up the open folder, and looked down at it. "You shouldn't go through people's things," she said, almost whispering. "It's not honest." Then she placed my ID on the desk, right beside the folder with my name on it. The last thing I remember is her hand moving toward the drawer, and the sound of it sliding shut. I woke up in the hospital the next morning. They said I'd collapsed from exhaustion. My coworkers told me Diane had transferred to another branch. But a few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was my old company ID, taped to a blank piece of paper, and under it, a single strand of my hair. My name's Ryan. I'm 32 years old, and I work maintenance at a mid-sized hospital in Ohio. I've been doing night shifts for almost 7 years now. It's not a glamorous job, but I like the quiet. No doctors barking orders, no crowds, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional squeak of my cartwheels echoing down the hall. You get used to the emptiness after a while. The quiet becomes comforting in a way. Until it's not. This story happened about 8 months ago. It was a Thursday night, slow, like most nights. Around 1:40 a.m., I was sitting in the break room drinking stale coffee, scrolling through my work tablet. That's how we get all our requests: plumbing, lighting, HVAC issues, whatever comes up. That night, a new request popped up out of nowhere: room B17, flickering light. I frowned. B-wing was the lower sublevel. Barely anyone went down there anymore. It used to be an old psych ward before the hospital expanded. They'd shut it down years ago after a flood ruined half the floor. It was mostly storage now: broken gurneys, old wheelchairs, boxes of expired equipment. Still, a request's a request. I grabbed my tool bag and flashlight and started heading down. The elevator to B-level rattled the whole way down, and the light inside kept flickering like a dying firefly. When the doors opened, that familiar smell hit me: dust, bleach, and something faintly metallic. The air felt colder down there. I pushed my cart into the hallway and noticed right away how different it looked. The walls yellowed, the tiles cracked. The lights overhead buzzed like angry insects, flickering every few seconds. As I moved deeper in, my footsteps started to echo. That's when I saw it, the old metal sign, Ward B17. The door was half open, and the light inside was definitely flickering. So far, so normal. Except, the floor was dusty everywhere except right in front of that door. There were fresh footprints leading in, but none coming out. I called out, "Maintenance. Anybody in there?" No answer, but I heard something. A faint rustling, like movement. Then a slow, dragging sound, like someone pacing, their shoes scuffing across the tile. I stepped closer, my heart thudding. Through the small window in the door, I saw something moving inside. A shape, just out of the flickering light, tall, shifting side to side. I called out again, louder this time. "Hey! You can't be down here. This area's closed off." The pacing stopped. Then I heard whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but it was definitely a voice, low, fast, like someone talking to themselves or praying. The handle was cold when I grabbed it. The kind of cold that bites through gloves. I started to push the door open, but just as I did, the lights cut out, everything went black. I backed up fast, fumbling for my flashlight. When I finally got it on, the beam lit up the hallway, empty. The door to B17 was closed again. I hadn't heard it moved. I got out of there as fast as I could, telling myself it was probably a squatter or some weird power surge. Still, I filed the report and called it a night. The next morning, when my supervisor checked the logs, he frowned and said, "B17? That's not one of ours." I told him it came through the maintenance system. He pulled up the request history, scrolled for a bit, and said, "There's no record of that. Are you sure you weren't looking at an old task?" I showed him the timestamp on my tablet, 1:41 a.m., but when we refreshed the screen, the request was gone. Completely erased, he looked at me for a second and said quietly, "Ryan, there is no B17 anymore. They demolished that ward after the flood. It's not even on the current floor plan." After that night, I couldn't shake it. I checked the blueprints myself. He was right. B17 had been converted into storage years ago, then permanently sealed. Still, I'd been there. I'd seen the flickering light, heard the whispering. And that request had popped up. I wasn't imagining it. I tried to let it go, but I couldn't sleep right for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see that hallway, that door, and that shadow pacing behind the flickering light. About a week later, I was on another night shift, trying not to think about it. Everything was quiet until around 2:03 a.m. when my tablet buzzed again. Another request. I remember the exact wording: "Room B17, thank you for checking. You forgot your wrench." My stomach dropped. I reached for my tool bag. The wrench pocket was emptied. I stared at the screen for what felt like a full minute. My hands started shaking. I tried to screenshot it, but as soon as I tapped the screen, the request disappeared, just like before. I ran a full system diagnostic. No glitches. No messages in the queue. Nothing. I thought about calling my supervisor, but what would I even say? That a room that didn't exist had just thanked me? Around 3 a.m., I finally worked up the nerve to go check. I told myself I just needed to prove to myself it wasn't real. When I got to the sublevel, the elevator doors barely opened before I noticed something. The light at the far end of the hallway, where B17 used to be, was on. Not flickering this time. Just glowing. I walked toward it, slow, every instinct telling me to turn around. The air grew thick, heavy. I could hear something faint again, that same whispering, except this time, it wasn't coming from behind the door. It was coming from the intercom speaker above me. I stopped dead. A man's voice, distant and cracked, said, "Wrench, still here." The intercom hissed and went silent. When I reached the end of the hallway, there was no door anymore. Just a wall where it should have been. A faint rectangular outline marked the spot where it used to be sealed up. And right there, leaning against the wall, was my wrench. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't. I backed away slowly and took the stairs 2 at a time until I was back on the main floor. The next morning, I went straight to my supervisor. He didn't even let me finish. He just said, "You need a break, Ryan. You've been working too many nights." I didn't argue. I took the rest of the week off, thinking time away would help. But the first night I was home, around 1:41 a.m., my phone buzzed. I thought it was a text, but when I looked, it was a maintenance alert notification, same format as our hospital tablets. It said, "Room B17, maintenance completed. Appreciate your help." I deleted it instantly. 2 weeks later, I quit, but sometimes, even now, I'll wake up in the middle of the night to a faint buzzing sound, like an old fluorescent bulb, and once, I swear I heard whispering coming from my toolbox. My name's Emily. I'm 24 years old, and last year I used to work the night shift at a 24-hour coffee shop just off the interstate in northern Illinois. It wasn't a bad job. The pay sucked, but it was quiet. We got a lot of truckers, a few night shift nurses, sometimes cops grabbing a quick coffee before dawn. But most of the time, it was just me and the hum of the espresso machine. I worked alone from midnight till 6 a.m., which sounds creepy, but after a few weeks, the emptiness just felt normal. like I was the only person awake in the whole world, until I started noticing the VA and IT was a plain, white cargo van, no windows on the sides, no company logo, just those long rear doors with a dent near the bumper. The first time I saw it, it was parked across the street in the strip mall lot, facing directly toward the cafe. At first, I didn't think much of it. There's a motel down the block, and we got all kinds of weird cars sitting around. But the next night, it was there again. Same spot. Same angle. No lights, no movement, and again the night after that, IT always showed up around 3 a.m. when the roads were dead silent and the parking lot lights flickered like dying fireflies. I remember the fourth night because I decided to test something. Around 3:10, I went out to toss the trash near the drive-thru window. I tried to act casual, but I was watching. The van didn't move. No headlights. No sound. Just sitting there, but as I went back inside, I swear I saw a faint red glow inside the windshield, like someone lit a cigarette. I told my manager about it the next day. She kind of laughed it off and said, "It's probably some guy sleeping in his car." "We're near a highway, Emily, not a haunted forest." I laughed, too. But deep down, something about it felt off. The next week, it started parking closer. Still across the street, but angled slightly toward the drive-thru window now. I remember one night around 2:57 a.m., I looked up from the register and saw a small flicker inside the van again. I turned off the main lights to get a better look, thinking maybe the glare was playing tricks on me. That's when I noticed the van's driver's side door was slightly open, not enough for someone to step out. Just cracked. Like whoever was inside wanted me to notice. I went cold all over. The rest of the shift, I couldn't focus. Every time I passed the window, I felt like something was staring back. At around 4 a.m., I finally built up the courage to take my phone out and record it. But when I zoomed in, the van was empty. Doors closed. Still, I couldn't shake that feeling, the kind where the back of your neck prickles and your stomach feels too light. The next morning, as the sun came up and my replacement walked in, I stepped outside to head home. I turned around, one last glance at the parking lot. The van was gone. Only, there was something taped to the outside of the drive-thru window. A small, folded note. The handwriting was neat. Sharp. And it said, "You looked tired tonight. Smile more." My manager didn't laugh this time. She called the police right away. They showed up within 10 minutes, took the note, looked around, but didn't find anything. No fingerprints, no tire marks, nothing. The officer told me, "You probably have a stalker, miss. You should get someone to pick you up after shifts for a while." That scared me more than the van did. For the next few nights, my coworker Jamie started staying till closing with me. We kept the doors locked and didn't open the drive-thru after 2 a.m. and for a while, things seemed normal again. Then, about 2 weeks later, I noticed the van again, same make, same dents, but this time it was parked behind the dumpster near the alley, half hidden from view. When I pointed it out to Jamie, she looked and said, "Emily, there's nothing there." But I could see it. Plain as day. I didn't say another word after that. That night, when we closed, I checked every window, every lock. I even walked the perimeter with one of the security guards who came by from the nearby motel. Nothing. It was almost sunrise when I finally clocked out. The parking lot was quiet. Cold. My breath fogged in the air as I walked to my car. And that's when I saw it. Sitting on the hood of my car was a coffee cup, not one of ours. It was a takeout cup, same size and color, but it looked off. Like someone had tried to replicate it. The label was handwritten, my name, Emily, in black marker, but here's the thing, it was my handwriting, down to the curl of the Y. I froze. I didn't even touch it. I ran inside, told my manager, and she called the police again. This time, they pulled security footage. We all huddled around the monitor in the back office while the officer rewound the tape. At 2:56 a.m., the white van appeared on the feed, parking across the street. A person got out. They were wearing our cafe uniform. The same green apron. The same name tag, and the name tag said Emily. We watched, silent, as that person walked up to the door, the locked door, and just opened it. No key, no struggle. They walked in, moved around the counter like they'd done it 100 times before, made a cup of coffee, and walked back out. Then they placed it on my car hood. The timestamp said 3:01 a.m. That's when the officer paused the footage and looked at me. Miss, do you know this person? I said no. But my voice cracked when I did. Because whoever that was, they looked exactly like me, same height, same build. Even the same way I tied my hair up in a bun. The video quality was grainy, but I swear, when they looked up at the camera, I saw my own face. I don't know what happened after that. I quit the next morning and moved 2 towns over. The police never found the van, and the footage was apparently lost during the system update a few weeks later. But sometimes, when I'm driving home late from my new job, I'll see headlights behind me that stay just far enough back to keep me guessing, and every so often, at a stoplight or in the reflection of a storefront window, I think I catch a glimpse of that same van, the white one. No plates, just sitting there, waiting. Some things don't follow you home, they wait there, quietly, like they never left, and sometimes, what you think you escaped, was just letting you go for a while. But if you felt that chill, if you saw yourself in the dark tonight, tell me in the comments. I'm listening. Leave a like if the van's headlights still linger in your mind, and subscribe to Jenny Noir, because the next story might be closer than you think. Remember, the ones watching aren't always strangers.